one of the things that Ullnooweg has been really focused on is really building that ecosystem around the community, like you mentioned. Simple lessons that we mentioned before, we lose our touch with nature because we live in cities or whatever, play games and all that stuff. So simple lessons that we looked at is basically when you take a tree, for example, you look at the rings, its growth. The smaller the rings, you know that your tree is nurtured. The bigger, the larger, it's nurtured. Environment is good. So we take that simple lesson and look at children like Brennan, an adult now, or children that you're dealing with. And over the history, we look at the indigenous community and say, has the community been involved in the nurturing of this child or this community? And most of the time, probably 100% of the time, until now, you can say that the non-indigenous community wasn't involved in it. So our rings over that history have been very thin. So naturally the tree isn't as big or flower or whatever. So we've taken that approach basically as looking at the ecosystem and how to make connections to the external environment, what's the infrastructure there, and how can we use that. So when the Tall Ships program came around, they approached AFN Regional Chief Googoo and said, Marty, we're interested in promoting the reconciliation stuff, and we'd like to offer a couple seats for Indigenous, the Indigenous population in Canada on one boat. And Marty, being the guy he is, he said, why just a couple seats? We want a whole boat. And but before he said that, he called me up. Chris, you think we can do this? Can you back me up financially? And I said, I'm in it. So we underwrote the whole project and started this Msit project, which brought together 45 Indigenous youth from across Canada, every province, every territory, and put them on a tall ship and set them sail across to France. So it was a leadership program, and I'll let Brennan go into that, but it was a leadership program and a cultural program put together. One of the things in my past also, and Brennan's naturally, he's my son, if you don't catch that. One of the things we've also, part of our history, is 50 years ago from 2017, so in 1967 during Expo 67, my dad was part of a group of paddlers that canoed from Ullnooweg to Montreal. It took them 33 days. So it was a 50-year celebration basically of that, and I thought it was very timely, the alignment of the stars. I always say that. It was alignment of the stars as to this project falling on our lap, and us as an organization being in a very healthy state to be able to do this as a project. So, and from growing up, my father always talked about his stories of traveling. He hitchhiked across the United States, all across the United States, and paddled to Montreal, and his stories were always funny. But it wasn't the humor that sparked our interest. It was basically that they happened in Montreal, or happened in Texas, or happened somewhere else. So with this was taking those children and basically opening their minds up, or young adults opening their minds up, that there were possibilities, opportunities out there, outside of the community. I'm one for pushing our people out in terms of jobs, opportunities. There are concerns about loss of culture, loss of identity. I'm not one for believing in that. I think our culture is strong enough that people, when they move, they keep that tie. And in Atlantic Canada, it's Mi'kmaq is everywhere. It's not just our reserves. So that's one of the points here. But for us as an organization in business, for us to succeed with companies, when you're looking at vertical integration of companies, we need people in marketing, we need people in fishing as an example, in international marketing. Well, the kids aren't going to learn about international markets if they don't go there, right? So we put them on a ship and send them out to France to learn about the international market. We looked at the seven teachings that we usually have. There's a number of them, but we focused on 7. And one of them, of course, was patience. And to them, my message was, well, you have 25 days to learn patience on that trip. You know, so the other was honesty and love and all that stuff. So going back to the 67 paddlers, one of the things throughout my years listening to my father was relationships that he built with those 14 individuals that kept going after those 50 years. And I knew those were strong. And I wanted to send that message to the young adults here that this trip was going to be life-changing. It was going to be a life-changing experience. And they were hesitant, and probably not enough of them believed that, but I think they do now. But from hearing my father's stories, it's a life-changing experience that'll keep them together for after 50 years. So this project that we got funded for was a reception that basically brought them together. And we brought those 7, actually. There were 7 now of the 14 that were alive. And even since then, Norman Bass, one of the paddlers, passed away. So we wanted to actually also celebrate the accomplishment that they had there. So we had the reception, brought the two groups together, and the rest is history. Let Brennan take it over.
I was one of the trainees on the sailing ship. I was one of 46 Indigenous youth from across Canada, it was amazing. And I think it's extremely important to help push our youth out there and to get them out into the world and get their views out there and show them how, you know, the funny thing about going out and traveling the world is you realize how small the world is, but at the same time you realize how big of an individual you are in this small little world. Like, the world is small, but if you go out and you go experience things and you do things, you realize how important every single person is and every single spirit. Like, there's a lot of people that haven't even left their communities their whole lives, that are like 20 years old, you know, old, like young adults who live in like Nunavut and Iqaluit and Northern Ontario, and that don't even have like clean drinking water. One of my friends from the trip, she goes to Mun in Newfoundland now. It costs her like $12,000 just to fly home because it's such an isolated community, and that's a big case for a lot of them. And I think being able to do something like this is huge, and it forces them into the spotlight whether they want to or not, and it forces them to be a role model and to be someone that their community and youth are going to look up to. And I said that at the end of the trip when we had everybody go up and say something, and I said, you guys don't realize how many eyes are on you now because of what you've done. And you know, you're so young, it's only going to go up from here, and it's going to keep going up. And you have to, whether you want to realize it or not, you're going to be forced to eventually. That there's so many eyes on you now that are going to be watching you, and that are watching you, and that are looking up to you. And I think that is the biggest thing that we get from this, that we get from things like this. And I think that's really how you shape the future. That's how you impact the youth, so that the roots are strong and the tree grows high. You know what I mean?